It's time for FOMO. So we are looking at one of the most FOMO-esque names this year, that is C3.ai, although they have seen some degree of a pullback, and I mean ever so slightly just over the last month, as we have seen some of this strength in AI start to wane a little bit here. I know this name is still on an absolute tear this year, but this past month has brought some weakness to the area.
Yeah, it's all relative, right? Because you're saying just a wee sell-off, and we're talking massive percentage off the highs that it set not that long ago, but also massive percentage off the lows as well. You know, going 3.5x off that, basically $10 low at the start of the year. So you look at this name, and of course, it just is absolutely in the right place at the right time when you consider the fact that it literally has the stock ticker AI in the middle of the AI hype boom and speculative bubble-like activity that we're seeing in the market. I mean, you couldn't draw it up better if you're C3.ai.
No kidding, and good for them for grabbing that ticker, because that is really valuable at this point. But today we did get some more pessimism from the analyst community. Actually, Oppenheimer, who is declining to take a bullish view on C3.ai in light of growth trends and competition. They said the company needs to show viral growth before they would recommend ownership of the overall stock. The analyst did initiate coverage on shares with a market perform rating, writing that the company may be a pure play on the hot trend that is all things AI, but he said that's not enough to warrant a bullish call at this stage. He said C3.ai is exactly what you said, Alex, the right place, right time, as generative AI catalyzes as a platform shift, which they believe as a firm will be as consequential as the internet, but noted that overall they're still waiting for this growth to ramp. Shares have soared over 200% on a year-to-date basis, but the analyst said the stock's risk and reward at this point is relatively neutral. He added that actually, as fundamental analysts, they can't move to an outperform rating yet on C3.ai, despite the long-term promise, without seeing a major step in growth first. I thought this was such an important narrative. This is sort of how I tend to grasp a lot of these concepts that are new or fairly speculative or growing, because he's basically saying, well, this company is tied to AI. It's considered a pure play into a very hot area of the market. He wants to actually see the company be able to meet some of these metrics, be able to expand its capabilities, the amount of data that's needed for AI to be as functional as what the street believes. I mean, we have to see data ramp in such a severe way. I think this analyst makes a really great point, Alex.
Totally agree. And when you look at the stock itself, Jenny, you have to keep in mind that this isn't like you're trading Microsoft or Apple or Disney. This is a stock that if you just simply look at its implied volatility, which is 100%, which quite frankly for this name is actually relatively on the lower side, it's the 29th IV percentile, just take that at face value. What is 100% implied volatility if it's an annualized number mean? It means that the market is pricing this thing as if it could be twice as expensive or worth zero. And I'm not to say that either one of those is actually what's going to happen, but it shows that, and you see basically when this stock started around $10 to start the year, went up to almost 50 and then sold back down to 35. It's reflective of that risk of the velocity of the move. When this thing gets moving, it really, really moves. It can double in short amount of time. It can move 10, 15, 20% a day, and that can be perceived as normal for a stock like this. That wouldn't be normal for Apple. That'd be a very, very, headline-making day. It'll make a headline if C3.ai does it, but you're not going to do like a triple take when you see it.
Right, and I think that is also a really good point, and the fact that this name is facing, steep competition from names that are well established in this market, like Apple, like Microsoft. And this analyst from Oppenheimer did actually mention that, saying that, well, they do see this being a massive market, all things AI calling for a $5 billion within even the next year. He thinks that in the short run, the spoils disproportionately sway towards a name like Microsoft, given the fact that it already has such a substantial investment in one of these language models, being of course ChatGPT. So I think that's an interesting point, the fact that this name is in the space, but right now they're facing competition from so many of the biggest names in tech. It's difficult to then see C3.ai competing with just the scale that some of these other companies have.
Yeah, and when you look at this name, you have to really ask yourself, what are you trying to accomplish? So the analyst also mentioned, the fact that this stock's up over 200% and the S&P 500's up 14%. Well, I would hope that an investor doesn't look at C3.ai, nothing against it, the same way that it looks at the S&P 500 from an investment goal standpoint. They're just not the same thing. One is a little bit more speculative, hyper growth in this new cutting edge kind of technology, and one of them is the broad-based index of the 500 of the biggest companies in the world. So, like, it's not even a fair comparison. It's like comparing, an apple to a green pepper. I'm not even sure you're in the same, world in terms of comparison. And so, it's not to say that one is better or one is worse. It's just, when you're looking at this, I think that the fear of missing out is clearly to the upside. So then it's like, how can I capitalize on what potentially could be a big move? Mm-hmm. It's not looking for maybe a modest type of performance, because that's not really what this is. This isn't a modest type of an asset. This is a really volatile stock that can accelerate. And so usually people who are trading these kind of stocks are trying to capitalize on that velocity, not trying to avoid it.
Yeah, I like to look at names. I mean, this company needs to post some year-over-year revenue growth. They need to have some more stable profitability. I need to see numbers each quarter that match a lot of this price movement, because right now we frankly aren't seeing that. I mean, I know shares have pulled back. They are down about 10% month to date, up 7% this week, but still up 252% off their 52-week low. So with that in mind, FOMO feeling, like you said, definitely to the upside. I think that those that are interested in C3.ai right now are willing to sort of acknowledge the risk of this name, because it typically moves with velocity.
No doubt, and I think what you're describing is something that George would talk to us a lot on Under 30, which is this idea of investing versus trading. Not to say that either is wrong, but maybe this is one that's kind of seen as more of a trading type of a stock because of its velocity, because it's new, because it hasn't shown those consistent earnings over time. But nonetheless, I looked at a very, very short-term trade, looked at it and designed to benefit from about a 10% move to the upside in this stock. So looking at buying a $40 strike call calendar in which we sell not this Friday's, but next Friday's 40 call, and then buy the following Friday's 40 call, the 7th and the 14th of July. This is a bullish strategy. Obviously, we've seen the risk profile a ton of times, Jenny. It peaks out at the 40 strike. So again, we have no idea what's going to happen, but it's 65 cents. I mean, $65 in risk to buy upside in this name. And let's say that we go through all of next week, right? And the stock's below 40, and that 40 call that expires next Friday expires worthless. Well, an investor or trader who has this type of a strategy on would then just be long a 40 call with unlimited upside. That's kind of the idea behind this, is trying to find a way to get exposure to the upside for as little money as possible, knowing that, quite frankly, this thing can go from 35 to 20 overnight if some bad news comes out. And
no kidding. And we've watched this name historically this year, even just see it make those sizable moves. So this name, I think it's important to be acknowledging of all of the risk, whether it's to the upside or, of course, to the downside.